Cape Cod League experience in this draft. Leaning on Cape Cod League success was a savvy move by Cherington due to all of the circumstances surrounding this year's draft. Full scouting reports were going to be difficult to come by since there has not been any college or high school baseball played since March. So, leaning on how players performed when facing the stiffest competition they have ever faced when playing the Cape Cod League was a smart decision by Cherington and his staff. Smartly, the Pittsburgh Pirates went draft and college heavy in this draft. 5 of their 6 draft picks were pitchers, and 4 of those 5 were college players. Their lone non-pitcher Gonzalez was also a college player. Right now, the Pirate farm system is lacking talent at the upper levels. Drafting college players that will be on a faster track to the majors will help with this. Additionally, the farm system had a much bigger need for arms than bats, so going pitcher heavy was a smart move by Cherington and his scouting department. Cherington's first draft as general manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates may not have been a normal one, but on paper at least, it sure looks like a successful one. The Pirates added multiple players with high ceilings and near limitless potential, which is not something you could say about recent drafts. Cherington's first draft as a Pirate GM appears to be one that could help set up the franchise for a lot of future success. In recent drafts, former Pirates general manager Neil Huntington has definitely not allowed and not given the system sort of the high ceiling, limitless potential type picks. Wednesday and Thursday nights of this week, Ben Cherington certainly bucked that trend. Now, some of Huntington's first round picks in years past I've certainly liked, and they've certainly panned out. I mean, the Pirates do have 6 first rounders, 7, my bad, on the current team. Some of them are drafted by Neil Huntington were Jameson Taillon, Kevin Newman, Cole Tucker. They've panned out. Now, Cherington, on paper, and again, all of this is just taking a look. Okay, the Pirates had a good draft class, and the 6 guys they got Nick Gonzalez, Carmen Majinski, Jared Jones, Jack Hartman, Logan Hoffman, and Nick Garcia in the 3rd round. And on paper, it looks like a very successful draft. And what surprised me, honestly, and I was watching on ESPN for the 2-day draft event, not on MLB Network, but the pundits, when they were reviewing the draft and seeing who had the best drafts, they didn't pick the Pirates as having one of the good drafts. Now, when you look at Fangraph's prospect grades, which I do like to look at, and I trust Fangraphs more than the ESPN pundits, I really do. And it showed that the Pirates had the 4th best draft out of their prospect grades. Okay, I'll take that. And again, you can't really judge drafts until, 4 or 5 years down the road at least. Ben Cherington in 2011 had one of the best drafts of all time with the Boston Red Sox that set him up to win the World Series in 2016. Ben Cherington has had some great drafts along with assistant GM Steve Sanders in Toronto. They did a great job up there, and you see where that franchise is set up with all the young talent they have. And the goal of the Cherington era in Pittsburgh is going to be not only because he set up the Blue Jays very nicely, but to see it to and through the finish line. Now, we will see what happens and how Travis Williams runs the Pirates. We saw Frank Coonelly was he wasn't quick to fire Neil Huntington. And Bob Nutting also had a big hand to play in that. And Frank Coonelly left the team as well. So there was definitely a clean slate. And when Bob Nutting went out to hire Travis Williams, I had the impression that this hire was to let Travis Williams do what he wanted with the team. And it appears as if that's going to be the case. And I would say, Huntington was here for 12 years. Let's hope in at least the next 12 years we have Cherington and he can provide the ultimate goal, the ultimate dream, which is bringing a World Series just like he brought to Boston to Pittsburgh for the first time since 1979. That is obviously the goal and obviously the dream if you're Pirates fans. Amid a heated playoff race in 2014, the Pittsburgh Pirates were connected to many different left-handed pitchers at the 2014 trade deadline who would have helped to bolster the pitching staff. At the 2014 MLB trade deadline, the Pittsburgh Pirates entered the day owning a record of 57-50. Although they didn't have the best of records, they were still in the midst of a playoff run. The Bucs were only a half game out of a National League wildcard spot and 2 games out in the division. They were only out of a playoff spot because of a slow start to the season where they went 10-16 through April. Regardless, the Pittsburgh Pirates were in the thick of things and in a prime position to make another run to the postseason. Like any other competing team around the end of July, the Pirates were deep into rumors. This year, they were into many rumors surrounding a handful of left-handed pitchers. The closest they got to acquiring any of the names I'm going to talk about today is the Red Sox ace Jon Lester. Lester at the time was a rental. He only had the rest of the 2014 season of control left. But the Sox wanted a decent package for the lefty, and for a good reason. Lester had made the All-Star game and was a potential AL Cy Young Award candidate. Through July 30th, Lester had a 2.52 ERA, 2.50 FIP, and 1.12 WHIP in 143 innings of work. He had a solid 25.5% strikeout rate and a strong 5.5% walk rate. The southpaw also had a 0.57 home runs per 9. Even up until the deadline, the Pittsburgh Pirates were considered the favorite to land Lester. After all, Lester would be exactly what the Pirates needed. The Pirates were getting decent seasons from Francisco Liriano, Charlie Morton, Jeff Locke, Garrett Cole, and even some underrated players like Edinson Volquez, Vance Worley, but they didn't have that one ace in the rotation. Plus, considering that Lester had a strong postseason track record, including a pair of World Series rings and 34 2/3 innings for the World Series winning Sox just the previous postseason, and allowed just 6 earned runs. The Pittsburgh Pirates fell short as they weren't willing to part with Josh Bell, and the Red Sox ended up sending the lefty to the Oakland Athletics in one of the strangest trades in recent history. But Lester wasn't the only left-handed pitcher who was considered a top-of-the-rotation arm. Lester became one of Oakland's aces along with Scott Kazmir, Sonny Gray, and Jeff Samardzija. In his final 76 2/3 innings, Lester allowed 20 earned runs, struck out 71 batters, but allowed only 16 free passes and 7 home runs. He also started one of the most heartbreaking games in Oakland A's history in the 2014 AL wildcard game, where he allowed 3 runs in the 8th inning after the A's were leading the Royals 7-3, allowing the Royals to tie the game and eventually walk it off in the 12th inning. The next lefty pitcher the Pittsburgh Pirates were rumored to be in talks with was the Tampa Bay Rays for ace David Price. Like Lester, Price was a potential AL Cy Young candidate. Through 170 2/3 innings, Price had a 3.11 ERA, 2.92 FIP, and 1.05 WHIP. He struck out 27.4% of the batters he faced to combat just 3.3% of the walks he handed out. Although he was a bit prone to home runs with a 1.05 home runs per 9, that was still forgivable, speaking how good he was overall. Plus, it's not like he was home run prone in the past with a 0.7 home runs per 9 in the 4 past seasons. Although he wasn't as usually effective in the postseason as Lester was, he still would fit the mold of the ace of the rotation the Pirates needed. He also wasn't a rental. Price was controllable through 2015, so he may have formed a deadly rotation the following year with Liriano, Cole, and A.J. Burnett, assuming the Pirates would still sign Burnett. The Pirates weren't as close to acquiring Price as they were with Lester, and the former Rays ace was sent to the Detroit Tigers in a 3-team trade that also included the Seattle Mariners. This trade was also a bit of a strange one. At the time of the deal, it was reported the Pirates had made the best offer in terms of prospect, but the Rays wanted players that were close to being MLB level or young MLB players, so Tampa Bay went in another direction. Price formed a 3-headed monster at the top of the Tigers rotation with Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. In 74 and a third innings of work, Price had a 3.59 ERA, 2.44 FIP, and 1.15 WHIP. He struck out 82 batters and allowed just 15 free passes and 5 long balls. He only pitched one postseason game for the Tigers, but he pitched masterfully. Despite receiving the loss for the game while facing the Baltimore Orioles, Price allowed just 2 earned runs and struck out 6 batters through 8 innings. The Tigers lost that game 2-1 in a game where the Tigers' bats just couldn't wake up. The final left-handed pitcher the Pittsburgh Pirates were connected to was another Red Sox pitcher, this time a bullpen arm in the midst of a late career breakout, Andrew Miller. Miller's career is best known for his outstanding work out of the Cleveland Indians bullpen in 2016, but also being a part of the Miguel Cabrera trade way back in the 2007 to 2008 offseason. Miller was formerly a top starting pitching prospect, but never blossomed in his time in Florida. After being tried as a starter in 2011 by the Red Sox, they made him a full-time pen arm in 2012 and 2013. In both seasons, the lefty missed a fair chunk of time, but was an excellent pitcher when he was healthy. In 71 innings of work, Miller had a 3.04 ERA, 3.12 FIP, and 1.27 WHIP, although he had a walk rate of 4.7 per 9 and a 12.2% walk rate. He was amazing at getting batters on strike 3. In total, he struck out 99 batters, resulting in a 12.5 strikeouts per 9 and 32.6% strikeout rate. He also only allowed a home run per 9 of 0.8. In 2014, Miller was healthy for the entire season and improved upon his numbers from the previous 2 seasons. Up through July 30th, the former prospect had a 2.34 ERA, 1.61 FIP, and 0.90 WHIP in 42 and a third innings of work. He was striking out batters at even more absurd rate of 40.6%. And was walking them at a 7.7% rate, much better than his numbers from 2012 and 2013. He also cut his home runs per 9 in half to 0.4. The Pirates' bullpen in 2014 was really inconsistent through the first few months of the season. Eventually, they found who they could rely on in Mark Melancon, Tony Watson, and Jared Hughes. But Justin Wilson did not follow up his strong 2013 rookie season with another good season. 2013 All-Star closer got off to a cold start and was sent to the LA Angels for another struggling relief pitcher in Ernesto Frieri, who would end up dooming the Pirates' 2014 postseason run. Miller would have provided stability in the back end of the pen, as well as adding a second extremely reliable left-handed arm to pair with lefty Watson and the righty Melancon. Miller was a rental at the time, but the Sox ended up getting back a pretty decent young pitcher in Eduardo Rodriguez from the Baltimore Orioles. Although he was never a top 100 prospect, Rodriguez was still considered a talented young pitcher. He has since become an integral part of the Red Sox rotation and had a 5.9 B WAR last season. Miller ended up doing pretty well for himself with the O's, pitching 20 innings of 1.35 ERA, 1.13 FIP, 0.60 WHIP, and 34 strikeout ball. He also allowed just 1 home run and gave up 4 free passes. He was also outstanding in the postseason for the Orioles and allowed 1 hit and struck out 8 batters in 7 and a third innings he pitched. Oddly enough, the Pittsburgh Pirates ended up not doing too much of the 2014 July deadline. The only move they made before the August deadline that impacted the Major League roster was acquiring right-handed relief pitcher John Axford, which was surprising given the fact that they were 57-50, a half game out of an NL wildcard spot, which they ended up getting, and only 2 games out of the division. You would have expected Neil Huntington to at least give them something, and again, they were rumored in on Lester and Price and Miller, and I don't question Neil Huntington for not giving up Josh Bell for the rental Lester. That would put us probably having Jose Osuna as the starting first baseman and not having Josh Bell. Obviously, we wouldn't want that. But the price thing, I put that more on Tampa Bay, and obviously Tampa fleeced us with the Chris Archer trade, and we don't really want to revisit that. But the reality of the situation is that they probably should have gotten David Price, and the rotation that would have been with Price, Liriano, Cole, and